Okay, this is a response video to one of George Fertitle's things about he was doing some desert exploration and showing some little shed-like buildings that have been put at somebody else's survival camp, kind of abandoned in the desert. You can get these buildings in kits, okay? And I'm at a local Lowe's store in Portland, Oregon, but these kits are going to be about the same wherever you get them. The smaller buildings out there, okay, living in one of those, you got to be fucking joking, okay? But the larger ones, it's still small. I mean, it's shanty town, but it can work. It especially works if you're doing like a little village arrangement where, maybe you're not living in one of these. Maybe you live in a camper or something you came up in, but you still use these as other buildings because you can build these without permits. So they usually come in a kit made with, okay materials. And the thing is, a lot of it's pre-cut, okay? But what people need to realize is it's all pretty standard materials. It's OSB. A lot of the measuring and cutting's already been done. If they follow the directions, you can put it together. If you have nail guns available, they can go together pretty quickly. But a lot of times the kits will give you just a bag of nails, bag of screws, so you do it with hand tools. So you can do these without major investment. And like this one, under $2,000. I'm not sure, some of those things won't include the floor. And I've made some comments in other videos about the utility of doing a concrete slab floor. But you can do these things too. You just got to watch out because it's not always included in the kit. But you can see how it's two 4x8 sheets, I think, that were cut. I don't know. This thing's not standard dimension. That's over 4 feet by 4. I don't know what's going on. But usually you get some, dimensional type cutouts for this stuff with regular construction. It's not rocket science, okay? A lot of the framing formulas for the tops on these already figured out. That's part of the kit. And I've built some of the, I built quite a few shed kits. None that were a liveaboard shed kit, but definitely done kits. And what I found doing these is it's almost as much hassle to get the right pieces in the right places as it is to just cut the lumber yourself. Until maybe you get into the roof beam stuff. And at that point, I'm going to be honest about something else. All you need is one carpenter out of 4 to be skilled enough to get these measurements right. You get one set of the rafter measurements all done as a sample piece to make sure you got it right. And then for the pretty most part, anybody who hasn't already cut their thumb off with a power saw should be able to make copies of those pieces as the other guys are working on other stuff. So, my opinion, getting all the pieces matched up to where they're supposed to go after they've been pre-cut can be as much of a hassle, if not more of a hassle, than building this from raw materials, as long as you've got at least one carpenter out of 4 with a little skill and creativity. You can see how even the professional assemblers that do these store display models together, we're not talking high precision framing here, okay? And to finish this building out, you still want some interior wall stuff here. So if this is going to be a living space, even if you're not sleeping in it, you want something in the walls, okay? Insulation and interior is all extra money. And if you're going to leave something like this unoccupied, the thing you got to realize is all those little crevices and crooks and crannies and all that, that's where the critters go to live. Okay, exposed wood is where bugs start digging in. Okay, so if you leave something like this out in the desert for a while, it starts deteriorating quickly. Here in Oregon, they change out these display sheds every few years because our winters look like this. Okay, and our winters last a real long fucking time. So they change out these display sheds from time to time. Sometimes they'll knock them down and sell them at a discount, or they'll just haul them somewhere. But yeah, you want to build that into a sleeping loft, it's possible. But they have this as like a little workshop building, utility building at a place that you're going to pull up to in your RVs. That is not a bad way to go. If individual people live in RVs, you set one of these buildings up as the communal kitchen. That can work. Okay, and then you set another building up as, let's say, a communal library. Another building up as a communal benchtop workshop. Can't really work on a vehicle in here, but I'm going to show you what the next option is on that. Over here, that's the really small one, $1,000 kit shed. Now, here's the thing about this. Okay, this is 2x3 framing, and I built one of these with a guy. It came in that kit with a bag of nails, so to use a framing nail gun, you got to look out because a lot of times those nails are going to be too long for this short lumber. But I built one almost identical to this, and the thing that we ran into is like this T-beam on the back wall. If you're going to drywall that, you're still going to add some more of that material in. But when you're talking smaller stuff like this, they use 2x3, which is plenty strong. But the thing is, at Home Depot and Lowe's, you can buy 2x3 lumber. So, these roof rafters, instead of being 2x6, because it's a small building, it's 2x4. And then the wall stuff, instead of being 2x4, is 2x3. You can still build that way. The tricky thing is when you start getting into the insulation and all that, window positioning, just these little decorative things. You can work with this, but this is like, okay, step above a tent. Like I said, though, you run into that issue of, what the vermin and rodents and all that stuff, if they take up residence when you're not here, this can actually end up being less healthy and worse than a tent because of those mold and mildew issues when nobody is heating, cooling, dehumidifying the place. It can actually end up being worse than a tent. But if the place is occupied, you can do it. The other thing somebody may consider doing is looking at the crating that these kits fit in. Is you build a building out in your place, and then the rest of the material you just leave stacked up in there for building when you're actually going to be occupying the location. Of course, you got to watch out for the material being stolen. Now, when you get into the larger barn types, you get into this, okay? And I think they took the door off this entirely. Yeah, they never even put the door on. These things can be so inviting that homeless people will come out here and start camping out in these things when the store is closed. Now, here's a nice $1,000 kit. That is not too bad, okay? I don't know why the other kit was more money. Maybe it was a window and a couple of things. Again, it's that 2x3 type stuff. A lot of it 2x4. You'd still have to add a little more framing to get enough nailing space for conventional material, but that loft starts to get realistic. It just that you can also buy regular material to build this, and it's you can almost work with this. And then if somebody's building this stuff on the sly, let's say you're an unlicensed contractor guy, it's not too hard to look at the kit price, $9.98. And then the installed price and say, okay, can we match that price or not? Pretty easy to figure that out. I mean, $18.99 versus $26.99, that's what it costs to build. Now, usually, it doesn't even require permits for that kind of thing. And this one here, they call a gatehouse, comes in a kit for $2,000. This is a little bit more of what you'd use for a kitchen, too. But the... you get a loft and everything right there as a kit. So if somebody's trying to estimate cost, it's pretty easy to say, well, you got to match their Home Depot and Lowe's installed price, which looks to me like it has around, $800 into it. Or you don't match your price. Or, if it makes sense, you just give them the location. They'll come out and they'll install it. And then we go in, we do the rest of the electrical and all that other stuff. So when you get into these larger ones, okay, you get the loft kit, you get the other stuff. They can customize the size a little bit. You can add windows, and they'll kind of do it all in the CAD drawings and all that on their own. This you can work with. Now I'm kind of tall, so you can see what they're doing. So a 6 foot, I could say a person can go up to 6'2" and still not bump their head in here, even with ceiling material installed. Without bumping their head, what they had to do is they had to raise that loft above that little sill line. Okay, they give you a nice little staircase here, goes upstairs. This you could work with. You can work with this as a residence. It's tiny, but it can work. It can be relatively solid. But also realize, if I'm not mistaken, this is like $3,000 or $4,000 kit. It's about $5,000 install, like something like that. We're still running into more money to finish out the interior, make it livable, and then put appliances in. So when people are looking at the tumbleweed tiny houses, which I think are $20,000-$25,000, it's not exactly full of shit when you're talking about all the appliances and everything. And it's not, okay? It's not totally full of shit. Now, one of the things with these little shed buildings is a lot of times they include this garage door. Now, if your vehicle isn't a great big romping, stopping 4x4, you can pull it right in here, which may not be such a bad thing for the places that you don't personally occupy all the time. If you left this with the garage door design on it, and then you don't permanently occupy the retreat, you pull your little quad vehicles right into the thing. Just park them in the middle of the living room. You close it all up. You have a caretaker on the property, but everything's closed up inside. It works. It's not a bad way to look at things. You pull your quad vehicle in and just leave it like that. If you have the Home Depot and Lowe's people install these and you start telling them it's going to be a residence, in some states and jurisdictions, they might report you to the building code people, because that's not what these are really intended for. Although you could do it, they might drop the dime. You never know. And for that reason, you also never know, what you're going to run into when you say, no, I don't want the barn doors on there, I just want a residential door. Now, one of the alternatives they can do is this larger door here that you can put, drive a lawn tractor in and out of, can still act as a front door. The 50-year siding and trim, these things can go for a while. They call this a gatehouse. I don't know what the whole story is about a roll-up door. For survival building, I wouldn't even screw with it. For the food cart trailer stuff, we need those so that they don't take up as much parking space. So with once this thing gets pulled off of a trailer, put up on a couple of blocks on a flatbed, we're gonna have parking space right outside that back door. That's why this has to be done that way. But for the buildings and the retreats, if you have a cluster of buildings like this, landscape it nice, it's not gonna feel like a shanty town. People living in the desert in shanty towns made out of salvage crap, I think we want to avoid that. So, if somebody's doing a larger scale prep and they have storage space, realize these kits, they're not major bank breaking expensive. And realistically, it's entirely possible that they could be bought at the last minute, even in the midst and the beginning stages of a major crash. We're going to go inside next and look at something I didn't address in previous videos, which is your roofing options and why you may not want to depend on this composite shingle stuff.